I'm having a hard time gauging the buzz for this week because there is this prevailing conversation about there aren't enough tickets sold for Beaver Stadium this weekend. But undoubtedly, this is the biggest week of Penn State football season. They have worked since January for the opportunity to play in the college football playoff. That's happening on Saturday, and we're here to break down the game, talk about all of that. And part of the obscuring of what's exciting Penn State fans is the fact that the transfer portal is red hot right now, not just for Penn State, across college football. And of course, we've got that news today as well. So all that coming up on the show. And as always, this is our recruiting show, so we'll sprinkle in as much recruiting as is going on right now in December, which not as much, but there is some things to talk about. And Sean Fitz has a handle on almost all those things. Ryan Snyder is going to be joining us in one moment because he's hard at work getting some information for people at bluewhiteillustrated.com. So Fitz, how are you doing today here on the precipice of Penn State SMU this week?
I appreciate you thinking that I've got a handle on it. I'm just trying to hold on here is what we're doing. This is the busiest December that I can remember, but for good reason. Penn State's still playing football, but I mean, with the portal, with a little bit of recruiting, this is technically the recruiting show, but we've kind of washed it out because there's not much recruiting going on. But yeah, the portal has taken over. It has changed from minute to minute. I was late getting into the show because I'm trying to confirm another visit today. So we got a lot going on. So man, you mentioned going to practice or us having open practice last night. I'm like, that feels like so long ago. And rightfully so, because if you're following along at bluewhiteillustrated.com, there's plenty to read, plenty to chime in about, and plenty of information there for any Penn State diehard. So check us out. As always, I think the coverage is tops. So try us for a week for just $1. I think that you're going to like what you see. Interactive staff, information ahead of the game, like all the kind of stuff that comes together. And yeah, man, it's great. And of course, I know we got some Nate Stands here in the chat. He'll be there too. So
yeah, $1 for a week of access. And it's funny because I kind of think of it like this is a stupid analogy, but I love stupid analogies. Like a duck. We have the articles that we have on the site. We have the shows that we do here, and that's a lot of what you see. And, on the surface, it's just calm. It's kind of the same stuff that you see, kind of uniform content. But really, if you want the information, what's going on underneath the churning of the real stuff, especially bluewhiteillustrated.com's message board, that's what Fitz is talking about. That's where the information flies at you fast and you get the intel before everybody else. Very much worth your $1 for sure for the first week. And then, of course, more as you dive in deeper into Penn State football. So just go all in is what we're saying. It's a great holiday gift with Christmas coming up in just a couple of days. If you haven't bought a present yet, what if you got somebody access to Blue White Illustrated? Because it's not the Jelly of the Month Club. It is the gift that keeps on giving all year long, but you get way more than you will for the price of admission because you get that intel in spring football, transfer portal commitments in 2026. We're going to preview some of 2026 on today's show and go on and on and on about all the great things we do at bluewhiteillustrated.com, fueled by the excellent reporting by Fitz, Nate, Ryan, Greg, all those guys. So let's get into some of the reporting we did last night at Penn State practice. Fitz, I don't know if it was or was not a quicker practice than yesterday, but it sure felt like it was a very quick window into Penn State football's practice and their preparation for SMU. So, again, that'll make this a little bit of a briefer segment, but I wanted to know your observations, what you saw yesterday for open practice Wednesday night. Yeah,
it seems like they cut it down a little bit. But I mean, what did we miss, really? Another couple of one-on-one reps with the backup offensive lineman. So no, I mean, it was a little bit shorter, but at the same time, like those Wednesday sessions have been kind of like a roll call, like who's here, who's not, yeah. And that's a big thing. I think Penn State fairly healthy going into this weekend. I mean, you're not getting Alonzo Ford back. You're not getting some of the guys that, that are long-term injuries back. And, we've been watching guys like Caden Saunders, who was actually running with the non-scout team receivers and stuff like
Yep.
that. And Keon Wiley, who was practicing but not really doing the team stuff. Like those guys are the ones that we've been watching. Seems like a month now, maybe more. So that's kind of where we're at with them. But Penn State seems okay in that situation, at least for the guys that are expected to play. So that's kind of where these Wednesday sessions have taken us. Some good things here. You don't really pick up on you pick up on the personnel. You don't really pick up on the schemes and things like that they're trying to exploit with SMU. But I mean, you can spend I know you that's your thing. I get it. But
Sorry.
I watch the defense, and honestly, like
No,
I could go out there and go through those drills right now because I've seen them so many times. Like it would be funny B-roll, but it would be what to use or what we're used to seeing. So I mean that's what I got on the defensive side at least. I expect a lot of what we saw in the Big Ten title game in terms of personnel. Obviously, they need to button some things up. SMU's got an explosive offense. You've got a running quarterback that can cause trouble. But like tight rotations at D tackle, Blanding and Gilliam were up last night. But at the same time, how much does that change what you're planning to do on Saturday with those three guys that you got ahead of them? Of course, Alonzo Ford and Akeem Beeman not being there stinks. It is what it is, but that's what you got there. But linebackers seem to be healthy. Defensive backs seem to all be there. Jalen Reed, who was in an automobile accident over the weekend, he was there. He's practicing, seemed fine. So that's probably the biggest thing. I actually didn't even think about that until after we left there. It's like, oh yeah, he's there. He's always there. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting practice on the offensive side because they flipped some things around. Not only did it feel a little bit shorter, but they moved the order in which they do things from the offensive perspective. And the emphasis was, and I don't know if it was an emphasis, but the quarterbacks worked with the receivers first instead of the running backs, then the tight ends, then the wide receivers. Now, are they trying to focus more on the passing game and getting the receivers involved? So they want to get to those receivers first? I don't know. I don't know if that's materially changing the way that the offense is structured to focus on receivers first. But it was interesting, and I do think it was intentional to rearrange those for whatever reason it might be. I thought that we saw more of the stratification again at the end of the season. It felt like the team was kind of opened up to everyone's on the roster. Everyone can play. So there weren't as many clear distinctions between the top of the roster, the guys that are going to play, and then some of those depth chart guys that are on the scout team. And what you kind of talked about with the receivers. Caden Saunders, is he ever going to play? That was kind of the thing Nate and I were talking about yesterday of he's with the team. He's been with the team for a while. So I know that he's been having an ongoing issue. We saw him in a boot. I think, what was that? The UCLA game? Early in the year after it was
early. It was either late September, early October. It might have been Illinois, but yeah. I mean, my thing is, how much do these guys change the math in terms of what's out there on the field, rep to rep? And does Caden Saunders change the passing game distinctly? Not really. And at this point, he was the punt returner to open the year. At this point, Zion Tracy seems like he's fine. Like he's done a good job. He's got explosive capabilities there. But like. You go like catching punts is hard. Like it's something that we don't give credit to as much as we probably should. But if you go 3 months without catching a live punt, like you're not going to want to switch that up ahead of the playoff. At least that's my feeling on that. So it's kind of where I'm at with Saunders and the same with Keon Wiley. If he is ready to go, like how much does he change your linebacker rotation? Probably not that much. I mean, it's not much that like they would have loved to have him this year.
Especially in this game where you've got a team that plays as much spread in 3 receiver sets as they do. Yeah.
So I mean, the biggest thing, obviously, Bo Pribula gone. That changes some things at quarterback. You've got a situation where your true freshman is now your backup is now a true freshman who has not taken a snap. Not ideal. Not gonna lie. It's that you can only get here. But he's a talented kid. You don't want to see that happen. We got the thing in the chat is like, do you see Amari Evans taking a few snaps at quarterback considering he played QB in high school? I really don't. I think Tyler Warren's the guy. Now, I will say, just based on what I've seen on some of the SMU that I watched yesterday, maybe getting the running or the receivers involved in the run game, probably not a bad idea. I don't know if they're going to, especially with that ball's going to be a rock on Saturday. SMU has struggled to hold on to the football. Penn State has been okay with it. Of course, that first snap against Maryland would say otherwise, especially in the cold weather. But how much do you want to toss it around? How much do you want to get it in the hands of guys that are not used to taking handoffs? Like those things that could come into the game plan on Saturday as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually forgot that Amari Evans was a high school quarterback because he was a part-time option quarterback for his school. Like the amount of quarterback he played, I think is he gets that tag, but I totally forgot that. Yeah, he did play quarterback. He had such an interesting high school film evaluation because he was super fast, and like that's where it stopped in terms of things that I could understand that translated to this level. So totally escaped my mind. The face I made was more about my forgetting of that more so than the question of could he play quarterback. The other thing,
and I think the direct snap game, I said it on Tuesday, the direct snap game could be something that you look into. I mean, that's probably Kiron or that's probably Nick. They've schemed it up well. They've blocked it well. And, if you're going to lean on an advantage in the trenches, that's certainly something that can happen. So if guys take snaps, it's not as a quarterback or a pseudo quarterback or anything close to what Bo would have been at this point. And I think not having Bo does hurt you, especially you look at that ACC title game. That first touchdown that Clemson scored, essentially a fake quarterback sweep where he just pulls up and then he finds a receiver that's doesn't have anybody within 20 yards of him. So if you're trying to get guys to bite, it's not going to happen as much with Drew. But Bo would have definitely been helpful, but that's water under the bridge. I think it's a waste of time to talk about it.
Mech Engineer did ask that question the other day in the chat. We didn't get a chance to have that conversation on air, but I do think that's how you replace Bo Pribula and the Bo package. To me, I don't know that you're putting Ethan Grunkmeyer out there to do it. It's an amalgamation of Drew is running more. I think in this game, you probably can get away with not having him run the football as much and still be successful on offense. But then Tyler Warren at a certain point in the year was taking those snaps anyway. He had been absorbing more of the Bo package with what he was doing. And then the direct snap game that you mentioned, I think that all kind of folds into how you get that option game and how you get the option quarterback element still into the presence of the offense. To me, the thing that James Franklin probably is lamenting more than anything is that they don't have to prepare for Bo Pribula anymore. They don't even have to prepare for the existence of Bo Pribula. It streamlines the process. And so now the variable of what have they done with the extra week of preparation to understand how to replace him? What are the wrinkles they do to use that? But they don't have now that third spoke on the wheel, that element, you got the element of mystery, but the Bo Pribula thing, like you liked having both of those. And that was something that he said after practice of, we only have 2 viable quarterbacks on the roster right now.
Yeah, and that's not ideal. And that's, we had a conversation this week about, maybe you should have gotten Grunk more reps. And I mean, that's all hindsight talking. Like you did not expect a scenario where, we've been talking for a couple of weeks on Blue White Illustrated about Bo, eventually moving on. But we kind of were caught off guard by him not playing in the playoff. Like that's not something we expected to see, and that's not something I think Penn State expected to see. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. There's a question in the chat from JC about should Penn State be able to win this without getting cute. I'm torn on that because yes, you would think so, but it's not like, hey, just run it down their throats type thing. This is more of a how do you implement what we've seen in the offense, which I think people have gotten to the gimmicky cuteness standpoint maybe a bit quicker than hey, this is actual like functional stuff. Like you can get SMU with throwbacks. Like you can do things like that. And it doesn't have to be Bo taking the snap, throwing it to Drew, and then Drew coming all the way across the field and throwing it, 70 yards for a 25-yard completion. Like that's not how we're looking at the cuteness factor, but like misdirection's still going to be there. That middle linebacker keys on those pulling guards. And that is a great way to find some chunks on the ground if you're looking for space in the middle of the field, which we'll get to later.
The comment that stood out to me yesterday from James Franklin, speaking to the media afterwards. First off, he was James Franklin when he has to speak for 10 minutes, and I think the CFP obligated him to speak for 15. He usually takes a question and will expound as much as he possibly can, saying as little as possible to eat up as much time as possible. Much shorter in his comments yesterday to start, and then realized had to say a little bit more as he went on. But one of the questions was about Kevin Jennings and how he plays. What does he remind him of? Have they seen a quarterback like this? His response and how his comp threw me off guard. Here's what he had to say.
Lamar. We haven't played the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens, but that's who he reminds me of. Athletic, can extend plays, can make big plays, does a really good job of keeping his eyes down the field. I think that's his style of play. I don't know if we have anybody else that we have played this year that's similar to him. But he reminds me, his game really reminds me a lot of Lamar Jackson.
I didn't have that on my bingo card, Fitz. And I understand that the style of play, not necessarily the level of athlete, but that's exactly where my mind went, was the level of athlete. So I guess, how do you feel about that comp?
I get why it's being used. I don't like to compare anybody to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's a freak. He's a fantastic football player. And the biggest thing that nobody talks about, how smart Lamar Jackson is in terms of, the football, the reading coverages and stuff like that. He's very good at that. I don't know about Jennings. Jennings also kind of like Lamar, loose with the football. Like, his ball handling skills, not great. So I think that's really what you're maybe circling back around. Now, I think Jennings is very good. I think he's a very good player. I think credit to SMU for making that switch early in the season. That's not a switch that a lot of coaches make, and all of a sudden it's the one that gets you to the playoff eventually. So it was kind of cool to see that. But yeah, man, there aren't too many Lamars out there. I've counted one, I think, and I guess the guys before him.
Mike Vick would have been the other Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to see, but Jennings is a heck of a football player, and he's going to test them. But like I said, it's kind of a Lamar light. Like, you get the running ability, you get the ball handling, you get he can throw the ball. Like, I don't think he anticipates, and I don't think he comes off maybe the second read. Like, he's a 1-2 read that and then pull it down, which, when you're that athletic, that's fine. Like, we talked with James Franklin about that earlier this year. It's like, hey, if it's not there, just run. And that's
cover one and run has been very successful for Penn State quarterbacks and for other quarterbacks in college football as well. And when I say Lamar very light, he's 185 pounds. So Lamar Jackson is built lean, but he's a big guy. And so he's 225 or whatever he is. A 6 foot 185 quarterback, slippery as he may be, still is a 6 foot 185 pound quarterback. So super interesting. We'll get more into some of those matchups and situations and all that later once we get into our game preview. But of course, we are here on the edge of the college football playoff. And I find that this has become a very interesting situation for a lot of people who are still working out how to do this the best way. Do you go to the game this weekend? People are making some decisions. Maybe I don't want to go to Beaver Stadium in January. As cool as that sounds, maybe I don't want to sit in 25-degree weather with a 10-mile-an-hour wind chill. I'm going to do that before the game at 9 a.m. for the tailgate show. My wife bought me a coat that is actually 2 coats put together. So I'll be doing that. But maybe you want to go somewhere warmer. Maybe you think Penn State's going to advance far and deep into the college football playoff. And if you are going to make that gamble, sign up right now, Collegiate Athletic Travel, because they have an awesome package for you for the bowl game series. Now, this is how it typically works. So, there's a bowl game. Every year before this, there's a bowl game, and you go to the bowl game, and that's it. Now there's multiple bowl games that are possible. So they have focused their efforts. If Penn State advances past Boise State, the Capital One Orange Bowl and the semifinal is in South Florida. Sounds a lot nicer in January than going to, as much as I love it here, going to Bellefonte and staying for a little bit. Love Bellefonte. Florida's a little different in January. So you can be part of the action with an all-inclusive bowl game travel package brought to you by Collegiate Athletic Travel, the national leader in sports fan travel for over 50 years in a partnership with Center for Travel, your state college-based go-to companies for Penn State bowl trips. They've got air-inclusive packages featuring round-trip air transportation from select Pennsylvania cities, deluxe hotel accommodations, airport game transfers, pre-game events, as well as game tickets. So if Penn State's playing Georgia, they're playing Notre Dame. I don't know who else is on that side of the bracket. I just know those are the 2 teams that are most likely. You can worry about, can they stop the Notre Dame run game? Can they score on the Georgia defense? That's what your mind is going to be going over, not how do I get to the game? What is the address? How do I plug it into my Google Maps so that I can go and find the stadium? Or Lord help you if you use Apple. I don't know how you do that, but you don't have to worry about that. That's the point. All hands on deck for your experience from Collegiate Athletic Travel with their veterans of the industry. And for those of you that maybe can get to Florida on your own, they also have land packages where once you get to the game, they take care of you the exact same way. athletictravel.com. Check that out. You can go and you can get more details on that Orange Bowl right now. 814-238-4987. I'm going to put their link in the description of this video so you can go and check that out. Super excited they're partnering with us here on the BWI live show and throughout the postseason. Of course, he's been here for a long time. We got to get to some recruiting at some point today. Ryan Snyder is still on the phone gathering information for us. We'll be getting to recruiting, but my perfect franchise, Andy Ludicky, he is a college football fanatic, which is why he wanted to join On3 and sponsor the BWI live show. If you want to change your financial future for the better, leave a legacy for your family, and to diversify your assets however you want to leverage the skills that you've gained in corporate management to make money for yourself instead of some other nameless, faceless suit above you, consider owning your own franchise. You buy into the safe and stable structure of a company, and you get to run one of those franchises. So you get the best of both worlds. And Andy has done all of this before. Not all of them succeed. Not everything's a great idea. He's there to talk you out of bad ideas and wasting your hard-earned savings as much as he is there to find you the right spot and find you the right business to manage. We've had multiple people at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com that have joined Andy and started their own business franchises and have started their own businesses. A former Penn State baseball player, he has joined Andy. You want more of that story, you can go to the Blue White Illustrated message board. But there's a bunch of different ways he can do things, and he also has the ability to help you buy a local business as well, which is as far as I understand, an entirely different animal. But if you have the passion to run a small business, you're a brave person. But he can help you find the right one to buy, and he can help you know what you're getting into, which if you're going to invest this much money, you absolutely need to know those things. 404-973-9901 or Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. I covered about 4% of the things that he tells me. You should see the notes that I've had since our last call. It's 3 pages, and at this point, it's all gobbledygook to me. That's why you need to talk to Andy, because he knows about that stuff. Fitz, one last thing I need to tell people to do, and that is please like and subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Congratulations to everybody. We've done it. We've reached 16,000 subscribers here on the channel. That's great. But like the college football playoff, my goals are much higher, and that is to be the #1 YouTube channel in the On3 network, which we still got a mountain to climb. So the work is never done, and I do need your help in that. So subscribe here, tell your friends about us, help us spread the word of the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, the live show, our James Franklin press conferences, and more. All that here for you on the show, and we'll be continuing to bring you as much content as we have throughout the playoffs and beyond. Fitz, what do you want to talk about next? We got a couple things on the rundown. Do you want to talk about the transfer portal?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's get into the transfer portal. Penn State officially got Kiron Hudson earlier in the week, and so we've covered some of that stuff. There was an update today. I want to save that for just 1 minute. Let's take a broader look at the transfer portal, because I think that you've done some good perspective analysis of what's going on in the transfer portal. Penn State has 1 commit. Other schools have a lot of commits. So I guess what's your take of the lay of the land in Penn State's work so far in the portal?
So much of this stuff happens below the scenes or behind the scenes. Like it is one thing that it's one thing to look at schools like Ole Miss, Texas Tech, LSU, like guys got almost double-digit additions here. And that's just not the way Penn State was going to operate in the first place. Now I think they continue to see some movement. Put in a prediction yesterday morning. But now I think it's one of those things that you get leading up to this playoff game. How many guys can you get on campus, and how many of those guys can you close? They had 4 guys on Saturday. I guess Teague Hudson was here last week. The Utah State offensive lineman was here Thursday, Friday. So lump him in there. He committed to North Carolina State. I honestly don't blame him. There's not a lot of space here. It was a tough sell for Penn State from the start. We told you that.
Yeah.
But defensive line continues to be very much in focus, and wide receiver continues to be very much in focus. There have been some targets that have gone off the board. Some have been sort of targets that were out there and they went off quickly, like Deshaun Womack went from LSU to Ole Miss. He was a guy that had a visit set up and didn't even get here, just because that's the way it works. And if you look at how the portal rules are set up this year, you can sign now, and once you sign, it's done. I mean, Suffice to say it's done because Dallas Wilson just, went back on his signing day papers from Oregon from a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and is going to flip to Florida. So nothing I don't think is ever done, but at the same time, it's pretty much done if you sign those papers, which we'll talk about Kiron Hudson in a second. But that's kind of where I'm at with that. I think Penn State done a good job getting guys on campus that actually fit what they're looking for instead of just like, mass hosting guys and bringing in guys that are just like, hey, how much is this going to upset the room? And then there's the financial aspect that we really don't talk about as much. We talked about it with Nate a little bit the other day. Like, it is the agent's time right now. That is what is happening right now. You've got guys going on visits and then for the most part going back home. And that's when the negotiation starts. And that's not always going to work out for Penn State. I'm not going to lie. Penn State has more money to play with this year than they have in the past. And I think they will be aggressive with it when the opportunity presents itself. But like, you're going to see this happen. I mean, Bear Alexander was on campus last week and he had a great visit, over the weekend. And he had a great visit, but he's going to still want to go to Oregon. Oregon, of course, is a menace when you're talking about transfer portal, especially with the funds. SMU, as you're going to see this weekend, kind of lives by the transfer portal, and they do a great job with it. And they can afford to do that because SMU has a lot of money behind it. So it's
really?
yeah, they do that. It's going to be what it comes down to is how much fits with that and how much does that upset the rest of the room. Now, at receiver, I think they're being aggressive. Now, they haven't had a ton of guys on campus. The one that they did, Kiron Hudson, officially signed earlier today. So that's good. But when you're looking at 2 or 3, maybe 3 guys, you're going to have to be selective. And you missed Eric Rivers. He committed to Georgia Tech. I didn't see that one coming. I thought he was going to make it to Penn State for his visit at the end of the week. But they've also had some other guys that have had visits set up and are not going to end up at Penn State. So I think there's different waves to ride here.
Yeah. So with the receiver conversation, obviously they were aggressive with Hudson and made him a priority. Is it that the right fit hasn't really presented itself? What Penn State needs and what Penn State has, and what it has can also be TBD. We don't know what the future is for any of these players on the roster, but just given what we know and where we shouldn't speculate, is there a specific type of receiver or player that they're looking for? Because the conversation is you need to go out and get the guy, not a guy. And so there is this perspective that, Eric Rivers is great. He's not a number 1 wide receiver at the highest level. He could come in and be a very valuable part of the receiving room of Penn State, but it would again be an amalgamation of skill sets trying to make what you could have in one player work when you have it 2 or 3 or 4 guys. So I guess do you get a sense that it is we're waiting for the right guy, or it's just, as you mentioned, it's just how the transfer portal works and they would be happy to have some of these guys. It just hasn't worked out yet.
Penn State fans won't accept this answer because they're just so down on the receiver room, but a lot of these guys aren't as good as what they've got. And you've seen the proof over the last couple of years that it's not always the quick fix. And there's been incredible success stories with this. We talked about Tez Johnson earlier this week, but there's been a lot more bust than boom. You think about Dante Cephas. We felt really good about Dante Cephas at one point. Yeah. And he was not that guy. Julian Fleming, we kind of told you about the entire time, whether you listen or not, that's on you. It's all over the place. I think Mitchell Tinsley was a success, but you've got various levels of success. If you can bring in a number 2 guy that can put up numbers, and I think next year you're going to have to move to the receivers more without Tyler Warren in there. Actually, I think that. I know that. They're going to have to do that. So you're trying to find somebody at the top of the rotation. Trey Wallace, I think, is very important in terms of retention. Like it's going to be one of those guys. But then you look beyond that. I mean, what about this apple cart doesn't need upset? And right. That's why if you look for 2 or 3 guys, that's what you're looking for. And it's why a guy like Malachi Fields from Virginia, I think, is a guy that fits pretty well. He's a guy that's had some prior connections with Marcus Hagan, so that helps. But you're still battling with some top schools, and you look at what they've I want to say target, I guess. Okay. So Reggie Virgil from Miami, Ohio, they targeted him. He was set up for a visit this week. He went to Texas Tech and signed right away. Great. Dejon Stribling from Oklahoma State, a really, really good guy that I really liked. Never really materialized in terms of visiting or anything like that. He went to Ole Miss, and you're looking at the programs that are winning and I'm using air quotes, winning the portal already. And there's some consistencies there. And Ole Miss, they got Caleb Odom from Alabama. They got Stribling from Oklahoma State. We mentioned Deshaun Womack from LSU. Like, they're not letting guys get away, because I don't know that there's anybody that's going to bid higher than Ole Miss. Now, Texas Tech is trying. Like, Texas Tech, for a really good evaluation staff, is now throwing all their eggs in the portal. So you got guys like Reggie Virgil. They've got 2 defensive tackles. Like, we talk about, I'm monitoring defensive tackle pretty hard right now. Skylar Gill-Howard from Northern Illinois, Lee Hunter from UCF. They signed those guys. Those guys are expensive too. So, like, it's a really interesting snapshot. And then by the time you get to next season, are these guys impact players, or what level of impact player are they? I'm not sure. It's really interesting, because it's like the old window after the first signing day. Supply goes down, demand goes up. So you're seeing guys that guys that would have, just been outside of on the periphery of the target board, just shooting up and getting Ohio State, Notre Dame, all those guys, all those programs offering. So that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. LSU, I think, is doing a decent job. Some overlap there. Nick Anderson, who was at Oklahoma, he took an official visit to Penn State back when he was a recruit. He's really good. Mansour Delane's been very good for Virginia Tech. I'm curious to see if that impacts his brother, who's a really good player. Jamari Butler from Nebraska, probably not the flashiest guy out there, but that was a Penn State target. So, like, there's been guys out there that have been on the radar, and these schools have locked them down. And there's no way to know if they're actually winning the portal until those guys get on campus and those guys get in the lineup and they play. I mean, there's just it is a ton of fool's gold. And honestly, like a guy like Cephas, you don't know what you got until he's here.
James Franklin talked about being selective in the portal, not wanting to be a team that brings in 10 players each season. They want to reload. These are my words. They want to reload at specific positions, but they don't ever want to have to rebuild through the portal, which is a lot of what's happening. You take a look at Ole Miss. Their team pass heavy, pass friendly. So receivers are interested, and they also desperately need those for that offense. Penn State, the great, well-balanced team, well-balanced approach, and they want to bring in guys, I think, that have a certain DNA. That's at least my observation of Kiron Hudson. And for more on that, we bring in Ryan Snyder. Ryan, hello. Welcome to the show. Normally, I like to have a nice graphic to cover things over, but Ryan has been busy behind the scenes getting more information about transfer portal targets and things like that. And I know a lot of this is going to make it in its way to a premium article, and you're just coming off conversation. So where do you want to start? Where do you want to go with what you've been doing while we've been here on the show?
We were not talking about SMU. I definitely thought we were going into predictions at this point because I'm so late in the podcast, but no, I just had a great talk with Kiron Hudson's dad, Chance Hudson. We'll have a good article up on that later. I think the big takeaways were all about fit, and this isn't nothing surprising, right? 3 big things, right? Staff stability, gaining more targets, quarterback, right? And I think that if you're a wide receiver, that's what a lot of these guys are looking for, especially if you're someone in Hudson's case where, he's trying to go to the NFL and trying to improve his stock as much as possible. And I think that was the big takeaway from my conversation with his dad about how, not only, again, of course, trying to get more targets, that should be possible. We would think in this offense. I think he had a little over 20 receptions this year, and in an offense that spread the ball around the 6 wide receivers who all had 20 receptions this year. So that's a big part of it. But I think Drew Aller was massive in getting this commitment or transfer over the line. We'll discuss that a little bit more in the article later. But also Andy Kotelnicki too, and just how much his want and need is for guys like Kiron to come in. So really good talk with his dad. I apologize everybody for being late, but there was no way I was not going to take that phone call, and that's just how it is this time of the year.
It was an interesting, diving into the film for Kiron Hudson. I expected him. He had 38 receptions on the year, 64 targets, but didn't start in some games. Now, participation is different than starting, but a guy with his pedigree and DNA and his performance, I would have expected to be, locked in as a starter, kind of a la Trey Wallace in an offense, as opposed to rotating with some of those other players. So I think that's a really interesting perspective. But Penn State depth at receiver is not it's also a thing that they do here of rotating players quite a bit. I guess, what's your assessment of his person, like what he brings to the offense specifically? As the fit for Penn State, all those things. What does he bring to Penn State as a receiver?
We'll start with leadership wise, and that was a big thing that, from a source perspective, not talking even to Dad, although Dad made that very clear as well, but like, this is a room that's going to need leadership down the road. This is a room that has maybe needed it for a little while now, and I think some guys have done a good job at doing their best to provide that. But Hudson was a captain for USC last year. He was a captain for their entire offense, and I think that's a big addition to this team in 2025. But as far as what he brings on the field, he's a guy that go across the middle and is great at making contested catches. I think he had 12 contested catches this year, around 20 targets or so. So that's a really good high hit rate that you want to see. I think I was comparing it to Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren had about 6 contested catches this year. Not that that's a knock on Tyler Warren or anything like that. He's obviously getting open and they're scheming him in the right ways. But, everybody's seen some of the athletic plays that he made against LSU and all that. Is he a burner? No. We're talking about probably more of a 4-6 kind of guy, not someone who's going to spread the field and, be that go route sort of player, but maybe more so a guy that's going to get you those tough yards when you need it. Someone you can rely on hands-wise and all those kind of things. So I think, obviously, we'll see who Penn State's still able to add and who stays. That's going to be massive as far as projecting him down the road. But this is a guy, just from what I was kind of explaining to me, not even from his dad, but from others, is who, could play the X, the Y, the Z. They want to move him around, find different ways and see where he fits. But at the end of the day, they know they're getting a good leader who can step up for that room down the road. And again, somebody who's consistently making contested catches, who goes across the middle, can do all the little dirty things, and it gives all that outside effort too. I mean, we talked a lot about run blocking with Julian Fleming, so I'm not going to go that route as far as the overhyping it. But
Hudson's pretty good at it though.
Yeah, but at the end, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's important. I'm not trying to say it's not, but. Yeah. At the end of the day, they're bringing him in here to make a difference and rack up yards and touchdowns and get those big plays that they need. And, we'll see who they're able to add with him, because that's going to have a big impact on, how he's able to have an impact for this team next year.
I think that's incredibly valid. And Fitz, I guess this is where I'm normally a guy that's like, don't talk to me about run blocking. Don't talk to me about screen blocking with a receiver. What does he do when he runs routes and catches a football? At the same time, Ryan mentioned this, and I know this is something I wish we could just bring on Nate, like just a disembodied head, to have a conversation about this. But he's talked about toughness, and James Franklin has hinted at tenacity in this room. When you watch the film on Kiron Hudson, he's on the backside of plays where he's not even involved, and he's shoving the corner out of bounds, trying to set a tone and intimidate players. How important and valuable is that? And I guess, does that translate to other players? How does any of that work in terms of resetting the mentality or the structure of a room from that leadership and personality perspective?
I mean, I don't know. That's probably overrated. Like, I'm going to say, if you don't have it, it's tough to learn. It's tough to get. He seems to have it. And can you pick up elements of it? Absolutely. But I think that's probably a little bit overrated. And, he's also coming here for a reason. He's coming here, as Ryan said, to get to the NFL. Like, there's an avenue for him to do some of those things on the side. But the main element here is actually playing football. Like, and I think that's, when you don't have the connections that Julian had to the prior program, and the fit was here because, it made a lot of sense for him to sort of go out on that note. Hudson's kind of a different story. We're going to compare him to Fleming in terms of like what he can do as a physical player, but at the same time, he's trying to get to the NFL. Like, he is trying to take that Tinsley leap to make himself a pro prospect. So I think that all that stuff is well and good, but I think it's probably missing the mark in terms of like what his biggest impact can be. And his biggest impact can be making contested catches and being a red zone threat and being a guy that can actually do that kind of thing. And can he do that? I'm not going to say at this level, but can he do that for this offense? I don't know yet. We won't see until the fall, but I think it's worth a shot when you take a look at what's on the roster right now.
For sure. And I think there is also a conversation of Julian Fleming is moving on, and his dependability in games maybe isn't what we expected, but has been valuable. Like, having a veteran receiver out there in the rotation is valuable. You don't want to take a step back and lose that. Bringing in Kiron Hudson, you are now maintaining and probably improving from an overall athleticism perspective that role within the offense. So again, going back to, you don't want to rebuild through the portal, but you do want to reload. And that doesn't always mean going out and getting the biggest name. It means going out and maintaining a certain level and production standard within your offense. And I think this accomplishes that and changes the maybe the surface area of the room raises the floor a little bit in terms of what they're able to do next year. But like you said, we'll all find out.
And there was a mention in the chat earlier about like Penn State hasn't gotten anybody. It's like, yeah, I mean, you got to get the right guys. And to me, that's not the type of program that Penn State is to go in. Like Ole Miss has 9 or 10 guys right now. I mean, that's if you go to 105, 10% of your roster right there. Like it's going to be huge, massive turnover. And a lot of these guys, and this is stereotyping the hell out of this process, but a lot of these guys formerly rated very, very high that haven't done much. And that's a very interesting way to look at it, because I'm going to say fool's gold again, because there's no better way to put it. Like there's a lot of guys that are out there that have a ton of talent, and Penn State may land a guy like that too in an I White, but it's very much wait and see on these guys, because it's not just, hey, I've got guys on my portal commit list and this means I'm winning. It's just it's been proven the last couple of years that's just not how it works.
Yeah. There's a ton of other things we can get to in the transfer portal, but we do have to talk about the game this weekend. Penn State, SMU. We need to talk about matchups, players, schemes. I said my piece yesterday on the BWI live show. If you want to go get that perspective, you can watch that show with me and Greg. I want to hear what these guys have to say. Fitz, we did a light preview at the beginning of the week. We're going to talk about what you guys have seen on film here from this and what you think the important matchups are. But Ryan, I do want to start with you. What have you seen from SMU, and what have you learned about them? So set the table for us of what you think this matchup is like.
I think they're about to take a step up, and we're about to find out if they're for real or not. There's a couple of things that really jump out to me. I've hit it on the board this week about the whole rush defense aspect. I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of who's going to win this game, cover spreads, all those kind of things. And one thing that just keeps being brought up is SMU's rush defense. But I think it's bullshit, honestly. And I'm sorry it doesn't add up to me.
If there weren't so many electronics here, I would have done a spit take.
I'm sorry. They played so many teams that can't rush the ball is the big thing. 7 of their opponents were ranked 90th or worse this year in rushing the ball. I mean, that matters. And I'm not trying to take away the fact that they have had success. But when you're playing Florida State, who's ranked 128th in rushing, Pitt 101, Duke 125, Stanford 91. Who am I missing? Cal 108. Like I think that stat. But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Penn State's rush defenses or rush offense has been perfect this year. But, I mean, the best teams that they faced all year rushing the ball. Louisville's 39th, Clemson's 43rd, Boston College is 50th. I haven't looked at everything those guys have, or, exact stats for those games, but Boston College ran for 180 yards on them. Louisville's running back had, I think, 120 some yards on them. So, my point with all that is just, I think that's a stat that's really getting a lot of play right now that I don't buy into. And I'm not saying that Penn State's going to come out here and do what they did against Oregon. I think Oregon, people knew going into it that Oregon's rush defense was probably the most thing that could be taken advantage of. Although I think Penn State's passing game kind of proven there were some other roles there too. And Penn State's defense got exposed a little bit themselves. Don't get me wrong. And there are some things that SMU can take from that Oregon film and probably use. But to me, it's that stat that everyone keeps talking about. I hear it on so many podcasts this week. But if you just do the research on it, it's bogus more than it's, I think, a for real stat.
Fitz, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I was watching, what did I watch yesterday? The Clemson game, the Duke game. There was another one in there, Florida State, just because I wanted to see how they handled a bigger offensive line. Where I was listening to Billy Embody's podcast, our guy on 3 that covers SMU. And, Penn State's the biggest offensive line they face. And when you combine that with the weather, the home field, all that stuff, you start to think, okay, maybe this will work. Now you take Bo out of the equation and, maybe some of those lanes close up a little bit quicker because Drew's out there running the football. But at the same time, a lot of that stuff will still be there. And I'm very curious to see. So watching SMU, they vacate the middle of the field. They leave a lot open in the middle of the field. How much changes when you're going into an environment when you know that Penn State's best opportunities come via the middle of the field with Tyler Warren, via the middle field with those running backs and things like that. So how much of a different defense do we see from SMU? And I also think when you're taking a look at when they play good competition, and the ACC competition, I'm very curious to see how all these conferences translate to playing other styles.
Yeah.
But they kind of expose themselves when they have to overextend themselves in blitz. So if Drew is able to figure out those blitzes and at least figure out when it's coming and get rid of the ball quickly, there's space over top. And that's been what has been fun to watch. You look at, I don't know if anybody watched the UNLV game last night, the fake punt, which was just gorgeous.
That was great. Yeah.
But like, it's kind of like that. You send the house, or maybe not even the house, you send 6 or 7 guys, and then all of a sudden, you've got to stick up, and those corners are not great. Like those,
they don't like to either.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like they don't want to blitz. They want to use schemes to get home. But again, you mentioned Penn State's offensive line being big and physical, and they have a big physical defensive line. If you can't scheme it up, you have to blitz. And Ryan makes a great point here. Their linebackers are 5'11", 225. They have to win with speed. So you don't have you don't have the luxury to sit around and wait. So yeah, those zones get bigger when you're aggressive towards the line of scrimmage. And I think that the nature of Nick Singleton and the run game, you're making a great point there. So if Penn State,
talk about the Pribula thing though too, real quick. Have you guys talked about this already?
A little bit.
Little bit.
We always love to hear your opinion.
But the Pribula thing's overplayed too, in my opinion. Like the impact that he had. I did the numbers the other day. Dude, he played 5 snaps in the 3 most.
But when you're talking preparation, when you're talking about the impact,
you don't think Gronk can split outside and throw it back to Aller?
Yeah, all that stuff. No, I mean, when he's taking snaps and as an actual run threat, and T. Frank and I talked about it a little bit earlier, these linebackers tend to flow with the pullers, and when that happens, you expose yourself on the backside, and that's where keeping the ball. And I don't know how much they're going to expose Drew to the run, to actually running and taking hits and things like that, but that's when you can kind of rip off some chunks with a quarterback. And
Fair.
Drew has done it, and I'm very impressed with what he's done on the ground this year. Absolutely. But it's every time he runs the ball, it's gonna be like Tua this weekend. It's gonna be like, just get down, man, get down, because there's a lot to play for here. That's not that extra first down.
Yeah. And this is not me being anti-Bo. I love Bo Pribula, and I hope he ends up in a great spot. But I just look at the snaps in Illinois, USC, Ohio State, and Oregon, and it was combined 18 snaps in those 4 most important games. It was 6% of the total amount of snaps in those games.
That's only a little bit under what I kind of expected for him for the season in terms of the package he would play. I thought it would be about 10%. I do think that 6 to 10%, though, to Fitz's point, to have to prepare for it is the part there's an insurance policy there that you always have that in your back
prepare for
pocket.
Tyler Warren before you're focusing on that. That's all I got to say.
I mean,
to me, it was Tommy Stevens all over again. It was keeping Bo in to make sure to do your best to keep Bo from leaving. And again, I love Bo. I'm not trying to knock on Bo. I just think when we're trying to really think about how Penn State goes about with life without him, I don't think in Lash they're as worried about these specific games. They obviously want him here for down the road. That's obviously most important. And don't get me wrong, yeah, they'd love to have Bo, but I don't know. I just when I'm looking at how they can beat SMU, and even if they move on, I just don't know how much of an impact he would have had. And I think he knows that. And that's part of the reason why he has to go take visits right now.
Was there, let me ask you guys this, because this is the conversation I was having on the couch last night with Zoe, where she's talking to people out in the world.
Talking to your wife about Bo Pribula packages. Jeez.
Believe it or not, she brought it
her.
up. She brought it up. Unfortunately, people know that I'm married to her, so then they ask her about football. So then she comes home and tells me about it and yells at me that everyone talks to her about football. She also loves football. So like there's a reason we're together. But her point was, and I've heard the sentiment, if Drew Aller gets hurt, you're not winning a national championship, whether Bo Pribula is here or not. So the insurance policy of that situation, how valuable is that from an emotional perspective for Penn State fans and for the Penn State staff, and how valuable is it for the realistic perspective of what Ryan is saying here, of what he tangibly brought to the offense and to the team? Fitz.
I'm sorry, I was in the chat. I wasn't really listening to you. I apologize.
Is Bo Pribula's presence an insurance policy or an actual thing that if Drew Aller were to get hurt, they could advance and have a chance to win a national championship if Aller was out for an extended period of time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a Band-Aid. It would have been a Band-Aid is what it is. I mean, it's winning the Wisconsin game, which is, that's the difference in making the playoff and not. But at the same time, like when you get to Georgia, which is a defense that's going to present challenges no matter who the quarterback is, or Notre Dame, who is a fantastic defense as well. Like you're climbing the ladder here. And that's the other thing here. Like SMU is a good defense. SMU is a great football team. All these teams that are in this playoff are great football teams. And all these games that they're playing are big games. I had to get that one out there just because I can see the discourse coming, but yeah, I think it is I don't foresee a circumstance, and I know that's been kind of proven wrong, but like that a backup quarterback could take this team. And I know, Tua won a national championship. They've had guys that have done that,
right?
And Cardell Jones and things like that. But I don't know that this team is enough around that quarterback to make a run.
So let's talk about is there anything else on the offense you guys want to discuss against the SMU defense? Because we got to talk about Jennings again. We highlighted this a little bit at the beginning of the show, Ryan, but I just want to any last thoughts on the Penn State offense versus the SMU defense?
I'm good. I mean, okay. I've said probably too much, right? No, I'm saying. And for the record, it is definitely not Bo slander. If anything, I am biased towards Bo. He's a Central York guy. I'm a 717 guy. I watched Bo Pribula probably played more high school games than anybody out there. I love that kid. But I'm just looking at numbers. It's just math, which I'm not good at.
and you could go watch him, and he could run and pass. And unlike Smolik, that you just ran when he was out there.
It wasn't Smolik's fault. I showed you. There, my. Let's just go on. Move on.
Hey, by the way, Smolik not cleared for games yet. By the way, in that I don't know that we mentioned that in the practice thing. He's been out there, he's been throwing, but not cleared for games. And I mean that's not a harm's way, or that's a harm's way situation. You keep him out of there.
Yeah. So the situation where Penn State has two quarterbacks, one of them's a freshman. I absolutely love Ethan Grunkmeyer maybe to a unrealistic degree. As I do with a lot of these young players that have talent but haven't done anything yet. He's a very smart football player. Who knows what he could bring to the table if he were to play. But I think that, you could do worse than Ethan Grunkmeyer being your backup quarterback, because Penn State has done worse, which is why we're having this conversation in the first place about the number 2 quarterback. So let's talk about the players on the field and the Penn State defense and their ability to contain the SMU offense, who has a lot of good qualities about it. But Ryan, I'll start with you because you are on fire today, as the chat has said.
I like Bradshaw Smith. Bradshaw Smith. He's a very good player. Go ahead. I'm just being tame now. Go ahead.
What do you think? Can Penn State contain Jennings and Smith, the two guys I think that are the biggest threats on the offense in the backfield?
Well, Duke was sure able to do it. There's some good ties to this program in Duke. We'll see down the road. That's the one game I really actually kind of watched after I texted Nate yesterday.
Who's Manny rooting for this weekend, do you think?
He's buddies with both of them. I'm just saying there's a lot of Penn State staff. There's actually, how many Penn State staffers? We got Gabe. Yeah. There's one more, right?
Rick Leister. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm saying there's some ties down there. If you think they weren't talking to Duke this week, I'd be surprised. But no, he has ties with Rhett Lashley too. So I don't want to overthink that too much. But it's turnovers, man. I mean, that's the one thing when teams have gotten on, on Jennings, that they've been able to force the ball and get turnovers. And look, that hurt Penn State against Oregon. But in a lot of other games this year, that worked to their favor. And I think the offense will do a fine job doing it, keeping the ball from turnover. Now it is going to be freezing cold, so who knows? That kind of leads to some balls popping out sometimes. But I think Kevin Jennings is a good quarterback, and I do wonder, Penn State has struggled against guys who can make plays with their feet in the past. We haven't had a ton of that this year. Is there what game this year was there a quarterback that really gave them issues as far as with their feet? I can't think of too many.
It was supposed to be Garrett Green. That didn't happen.
No.
You thought UCLA might, but that didn't happen. He's in the portal, by the way, and I thought he looked really good. Maybe that's just a one-off thing, but sorry, that's been bugging me for a couple weeks now.
Mm-hmm. But either way, I mean, that's been an issue at times, and I get it. It's an issue for a lot of teams at times. I mean, that's why schools want.
Ohio State would be the only team. Just sorry to interrupt. Ohio State. I think Will Howard got him a couple times on some of those read options. That would be it.
So you got to keep him contained, and can't let Bradshaw Smith bounce too many outside. And I think when I see SMU's strengths, I feel like they fall into Penn State strengths. Am I wrong with that?
No, we'll get to our predictions in a minute. I'm on your side in terms of I think this should be a comfortable Penn State advantage across the board. Fitz,
Sean,
what are your thoughts?
I'm not giving a soundbite like that. No, I mean, you look at I am very curious because I don't want to talk about weather because I think it's overplayed. But at the same time, how much of a factor is that going to be? I think it's easy to overrate it, but at the same time, it's easy to say, hey, this is a team that has struggled with ball handling. This is a team that's put the ball on the ground, just carrying the football. They've been pretty loose with it, even though they're tremendously talented, especially in the backfield, with Jennings and Smith. That ball is going to be tough to handle on Saturday. I think it's going to be for both sides, but like, how do you emulate that practicing in Dallas versus how do you do, I'm sure that they're trying to, bringing out the ice cream freezers or something like that and putting the balls in there. It's just it's a different kind of cold. It's a different kind of atmosphere, and it's a different kind of situation. And when you come out and you see Penn State's guys warming up without shirts on, it's going to be, it's going to do something in the mental aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
So, but from looking at this team, I mean, there's a lot to like, because they got weapons outside, they've got speed outside, they've got a tight end, Matthew Hibner, who transferred from Michigan. I think he's a pro player. Like, I'm watching them play, and I texted Billy. I'm like, hey, this guy's an NFL guy. He's like, I think so, but like, he's not on the radar at all. But Hibner's a heck of a football player. Like, he's really good. He's from Lake Braddock in Northern Virginia as well. But you look at the weapons that they have, the things that they're going to have to do. And I feel like we've talked about this game before, in the sense of leading up to a lot of these different games, is, when you have some things going against you, like weather, like being a little bit, shorthanded, a little bit smaller, like you have to do different things. And they've done that. They've done some fake runs that have opened up for Smith to get involved in the passing game. They've done a lot of things that try and set you off. And hey, Tony Rojas has been under the microscope for a long time. He is going to be a key player in this game. Jalen Reed, who has not played his finest football down the stretch, is going to be a key player in this game. Penn State is going to face a reverse at some point this week, and it's going to be a key play, because it can either be a 14-yard loss or it can be a 70-yard touchdown. Like that is going to be the difference here.
Yeah.
And then going back to what we saw in the ACC title game, TJ Parker, former Penn State commit TJ Parker, and just I don't even want to put that image in people's heads, because like, think about him with Abdul Carter on the other side.
Yeah.
He was a menace. He was a menace, and people are asking in the chat, do you move Carter and make him a spy? I think that's a waste, because the spy just keeps him ahead. Abdul Carter on the edge goes after and makes plays. TJ Parker was able to get home. TJ was able to, I believe, force a fumble in one of the first plays or something of that nature. So, like, Abdul can be a menace in this game. He should be a menace in this game. It should come from the defensive end spot, but also move him around a little bit. And the other thing if you're going to spy, which I think Penn State's defense from 1 to 11 is good enough not to do that. But at the same time, if you find yourself in that situation, you're not spying. This isn't an Oklahoma drill. This isn't one-on-one every time. You're spying with a guy that can stay in front of him and make him change direction and filter him back into the rest of your defense. So it's not necessarily playing Jennings versus Carter one-on-one, because that is taking Carter out of the best thing that he does, which is go forward.
Can I jump in here? One of the things I think that you're bringing up here, that spy idea, that's one of the things Manny Diaz did, was only rush 3, get pressure, and then force the quarterback to run. So when you're talking about an athletic defense from top to bottom, you've got multiple guys that could be a spy. You've got one Abdul Carter that is going to win more times than not getting after the quarterback. So even if a couple of times maybe you want to do that and you send a pressure where then Abdul Carter can go be a predator and wait for the prey to, break out of the pocket. They've done a great job of mixing that up in terms of Tony Rojas has been a spy. Abdul Carter's been the spy. Even Kobe King at times has been a spy in this. The one thing I would say is you have to be aware of both the running back and the quarterback out of the backfield on some of those third down plays. So that does stress your defense a little bit in terms of, if you blitz, now you are in one-on-one in open space. But I think you make great points about the idea of how you go about forcing the pressure to then make the spy a relevant player, so he's not just standing around watching the play.
And how does Zane Durant, Denai Dennis Sutton, Smith Vilbert, the guys that you can line up on the interior on third down and long, like how much does that change? Because you got to keep him in front of you. Like, that is the thing. Like, everybody wants sacks, absolutely, but keep his offensive linemen in front of him so that he has to look around them, number one. And then number two, make those lanes a little bit tighter. That's kind of how I'm seeing with that. So a spy is a great idea, but I think it kind of hamstrings you with what you're trying to do defensively, which is get after him. You just got to keep ideally your spy is that third or fourth defensive lineman that can
Right.
stay in front of him, that can, sort of, and it's easier said than done, obviously, but that can stay in front of him and keep him in the pocket. And that's when you need to clean up on him, because these tackles, they're talented, but it's kind of like Penn State. They're talented, but like there have been holes there at times.
Mm-hmm. And pressure, I think the run game and the ability to disrupt and put in third and long, Penn State, I think, has an advantage there. But of course, I got all up into this conversation. I love these ideas of what should Penn State do, what should the scheme be. Forgot that we have a time limit here on the show, and we do need to get to game predictions. So give me your predictions, and if you don't remember them, they're on the rundown. You can read them off there. Fitz, we'll start with you, and then we'll wrap up with Ryan. What is your score prediction for the game?
I actually remembered mine this week, so thank you for that. I have Penn State winning 31-21. I've argued with myself about how many points, but college football, you look up and you don't particularly find yourself thinking it's a high scoring game, and it's there's 30 points on the board for one team. So I've got 31-21. I think SMU is a fantastic team. I think there's a lot to go with, but I think there's also a lot going against it this week, coming up, playing in the cold, and making that jump from the ACC, which Clemson's probably the most Penn State like ACC team.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's a jump. So I'm excited to watch Jennings play. I think he's a fantastic player. He's a fantastic athlete that can get some things done. But my first note here when I was writing down SMU is hit the bleep out of the quarterback, because that's what you're going to want to do this weekend, because it's cold.
Favorite thing to do.
Yes, they like doing that. So you lay some hits on him, and it's cold, and all of a sudden, I'm not saying, this kid is a gamer. He's a fantastic player, but it changes some things when you're out there in 20-degree weather. So and again, the wind. How much of that is a factor, especially with him throwing the football? How much does that get you closer to the line of scrimmage? And how much can Penn State's defense, which has to stay home, stay disciplined, avoid the double moves, avoid some of the things that SMU has tried to work into, I guess, complicate and make you think, which is obviously what you want to do for every college defense. But avoid some of that, and I think you'll be okay.
Ryan, and James Franklin, I don't remember him emphasizing a player as much as he has Jennings so far this week. Started with it on Monday, talked about it on Wednesday. It's been a large discussion point throughout the week. So I think that spot on there. Ryan.
34-21. And I was in the camp of SMU covering this game all week, but just the more I watched it, I just think there's going to be a step up here. And I get that Clemson has talent, but I think Penn State has clearly developed their talent better. And I think that's been clear over the last couple of years, and we will see where things go. But I brought up all my stats. I think the rushing defense is, well, I'm not saying it's bad, but I just think it's pretty overrated as far as, the stock it's been given this week.
I believe the word you used was bullshit. So you didn't say it was.
It is. Well, it is kind of a bullshit. It's just... It's just it's shocking to me. It's just shocking to me how much stock it has gotten everywhere. Listen to any of these podcasts that are trying to predict the game, and they're always talking about this stat. And I don't know. I feel like Penn State should be able to wear them down in the third quarter. How many times have we seen Penn State take advantage of teams in the third quarter? This feels like an opportunity for them to do that. The cold weather thing doesn't bother me too much. I grew up in PA. It always sucks playing in the cold weather. I don't care where you're from. I think that'll be pretty even on both sides. But I see Penn State taking advantage of things in the second half and wearing SMU down eventually. And I still believe that Penn State's defense, while they did not have a great showing against Oregon, they can rally here to some degree. They're not going to keep SMU off the board. I think 21 points is fair for SMU. But I think Penn State's offense, running the ball, maybe getting a big play or two, especially like Sean said, across the middle, I think that'll be the difference.
If Penn State plays its best game on offense specifically, and if Drew Aller and Nick Singleton play the way they've been playing, Penn State wins this game, and there's not much that the SMU offense could do to keep up, in my opinion. Because I agree, I'm somewhere in between what Ryan said of their run defense being overrated, but they still have good players. So there is a middle ground of Penn State should be able to run the ball, but it could be a fight for them to get some of those yardage totals that they've been used to recently. And again, Drew Aller can figure out a defense better than any quarterback I've watched. This defense, while it looks complicated, ends in cover 3. And if you know where the end destination is, whatever SMU's game plan is to change that up with an extra week of preparation, eventually they're going to have to get back to that. So to me, Penn State puts up points in this game. They've got to put up points in this game, because if you allow SMU to stay around, yes, the problems can start to mount in terms of game pressure. Tony Rojas, as you mentioned, he's going to be vital to contain, and not just him, but missing tackles. That is the area where Penn State has been most susceptible. So don't miss a lot of tackles. I still think you can miss some because they have been good at not letting a missed tackle turn into a touchdown. Like there still is a good rally to the football mentality in this defense. So I got Penn State winning 34-20. I had it 34-17, and then James Franklin called Jennings Lamar Jackson, so I had to go and reassess and give them a couple more points. This is a little bit closer, but I still think Penn State is a firm victor in this game. I think they should be able to lead the entire time and win the football game. We'll see if that all plays out. Guys, I know we're a little bit over time. Any final thoughts? We've got some announcements for next week, and then we'll get out of here.
There will be some missed tackles this weekend, and I think that that's just going to be part of the game, like part of the weather, part of your hands are not feeling great. There will be missed tackles. There will be some interesting bounces that happen. I can't wait to see it, and I'm really excited to do it. I'm glad we got through the show without talking about the ticket situation, so it's great.
Phenomenal. Yeah, leave that to the internet.
I've only done 20 minutes. We can go another 20 if you want. No, I'm kidding. I got a lot of typing to do.
We do have to let you know of one thing, and I meant to talk about this at the beginning of the show during all of our kind of preliminary things. But if you're a regular here on the show, just stick around for 1 second. Don't turn things off because we do have announcements about the schedule for Christmas week. We're going to be back on Monday. So quick turnaround for us. We're going to be there for the game. We're going to watch the game. We're going to have the post-game show. We're going to post-game analysis. Sunday, we're going to compress everything into there. And then we're going to be back Monday to talk about Penn State, SMU, and whatever happens after that, whatever it might be. Boise State is on the horizon if they win. Fire and brimstone falling from the sky if they lose. So we'll talk about that on Monday. Christmas Eve, you're not going to hear from us. You're not going to see from us here on the channel. We'll be back. This group will be back on Friday. So that's going to be our schedule. Monday, Friday, we're going to take the middle of the week off. And then, of course, if we keep going, holiday schedule will be determined by the bowl schedule for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. We'll get to that when we get to it. But join us 9 a.m. for the tailgate show. I have a giant puffy coat. It's going to be hilarious, I think. Or it'll just be me in a puffy coat, and you won't care.
I'll be sitting in the press box. Have fun with that.
Yeah, it'll be wonderful. We got to go. We'll talk to you later.